Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I am the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is part of a special series of webinars that we do specifically for really incoming and existing leadership teams. So we'd like to try to cover all of the different aspects of what it means to be on a leadership team, what your responsibilities are within BNI Connect and some of the different reports that you have to file on a weekly basis, as well as some of the reports that may be helpful for you in your position. For example, reviewing members and reviewing memberships and signing speaker rotations and entering POMS reports and all of that fun stuff. So we're going to cover all that today. Normally our webinars are about 30 minutes. This one is a slightly longer webinar. We're probably going to go about 45 minutes to an hour. It will largely depend on also how many questions we get. Usually I save most of the questions to the end, but in this webinar, just because we have so many people from so many different roles, I try to pause a couple of times throughout the webinar to see, make sure that people understand the different aspects of their positions. So with that said, I do have a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started today. The first is that this is a live webinar, so all of you that are here with us today, that means that you can ask questions as we're going through the material. The best way to do that is to please type your question into the questions panel. I'll see those pop up on my screen and I'll be able to answer them as we're going through the material today. We also will record this webinar, so if you need to go back and review it at a later time, you can do that. Or if, let's say that you're the president of your chapter and your incoming vice president wasn't able to make it today, you can send the link so that they can review this webinar as well. And finally, although, again, we do try to schedule these to 45 minutes or so to an hour for this particular webinar, I am always happy to stay on these calls until every single question has been answered. So don't worry about me. This is what I do all day, every day. I answer questions about BNI Connect. I teach people how to use the system. I troubleshoot things when they go wrong. So if you have questions, again, I'll stay here as long as you need me to be. But that said, I want to be respectful of everybody else's time because you also have your other businesses to get back to and other things to do and phone calls to return and referrals to generate. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, well, congratulations if you're going to be taking over a particular role in your chapter, whether that's president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, visitor host, membership committee. I know I'm a member, by the way, been a member since 2002. I'm stepping into the membership committee this time around, so I'll be doing lots of checking on reports and things like that when I'm working with my vice president and other members of the leadership team. But that said, I do want to give one big caveat before I go too deep in today's presentation. That is that every region is a little bit different, and every chapter is a little bit different. And I mean, yes, BNI is a standard, and yes, we have the agenda, and we have a lot of things that we do the same, but certain there are certain tweaks. So, for example, in most regions around the world, including my region, it's the vice president's responsibility to enter the POMS report on a weekly basis, as quickly as possible following the chapter meeting. However, in some regions, they have delegated that responsibility onto another position. I know for a fact, and we might have some people on the call with us today from Miami, Florida. They, for example, have a special data entry position in their chapter that has been delegated for entering the POMS report on a weekly basis. So there's opportunities like that exist throughout the world. So if I say, something like, oh, and then the visitor host enters the visitors into the system, and you're thinking, well, actually that's the secretary treasurer that does that. Just know that there are some differences from region to region. Okay, so as long as everybody is good with that, let's go ahead and take a look at certain things. Now, what we're on right now in the system is the home page. I'm not going to go too far into this because we do some webinars just on how to enter slips and things like that. But I will say, especially if you are the incoming vice president, your job will be a lot easier if your members submit their own referral slips and thank you for closed business slips online through BNI Connect. So for example, if they go in, I just had a one-to-one for lunch just before we did this webinar. So if I was to go in and submit a one-to-one slip, I can select somebody from my chapter. I actually met with Steve Petrucci, so I can choose Stephen from the list here. And we met at Pasquale's, and we actually talked about the upcoming, Bill, I can't type today apparently, in the leadership team, and we just met today. So I can go ahead and submit this. So all of these different slips, as long as your members are submitting them, what happens is that I now get to save the details of that slip going forward so I can see all of the people I had one-to-ones with, but also that one-to-one information just got automatically entered into the PALMS report. So one of your primary tasks of entering that PALMS report on a weekly basis, if you're sitting there sorting out all of the paper slips and entering them manually into the report, that's going to take you 45 minutes, an hour, hour and 15 minutes on a weekly basis. When the members are inputting their slips, then it's just a matter of literally taking the attendance and hitting submit, which takes only about 90 seconds. But you will get questions if you are using the online slips from your members. I want to make sure that you understand a couple of things about that. So as soon as I do submit a slip, it will appear immediately in my review my slips report. So if I look at my one-to-one slips here, for example, immediately right now there's that one-to-one I just entered for Stephen Petrucci. Now you'll notice though that there is a status of draft. This has a draft status. And what that means is that my meeting hasn't happened yet. We meet on Thursdays. We're meeting tomorrow. Only after the meeting has happened and after my vice president has submitted the report for the week will that go to completing. Once it's completed, it will now be part of all the stats. The other thing is that my number of one-to-ones here in this report at the top of the screen did not change. Okay, it was not increased to 59. That will happen after the meeting and again after that referral slip, right after the PALMS report has been input this week by the vice president. So that will stay the same for now. So the question we always get asked, of course, is, how come it's still in draft, and then how come these numbers didn't change? And again, that's because the PALMS report hasn't been submitted yet. And the other thing that you'll sometimes get is, that's not right. I had, I didn't have, 7,000 CEUs, or I had more than that many number of one-to-ones. If you have a member that approaches you with a challenge like that, my recommendation is you ask them to go and log into BNI Connect and then click on their My Personal Participation report. This will show the week-by-week activity of what was entered into the PALMS report for them. So they can actually go through and say, oh, you know what, I wasn't absent on that particular week, or I wasn't, I had given more referrals that week. There was 2 referrals, not 1. And a lot of times, sometimes you'll say, wow, they should have like 17,000 one-to-ones or 17,000 CEUs. And a lot of times that's just because the numbers for thank you for closed business were, they were added in the wrong column by accident. So this way you can actually see which week it was that you need to make the correction for. All right, so that's, again, I'm not going to go too far into the whole online slips and the stuff on the home page, but do we have any quick questions about the online slips? Again, I do think it's really important, especially if you're just moving into using the online slips, but that you guys understand how that works. All right, remember, if you need to type a question in at any time, then just type that in. I'll see it pop up on my screen. And we do have a question here from Julie. And Julie says, what if a one-to-one is between more than 2 members? And the answer to that is we only record one-to-ones with one other member. So just by the definition of what it's called, a one-to-one is a meeting between 2 individual members to specifically work on growing their business. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a value in doing group one-to-ones or doing contact sphere meetings. But again, it's not really a one-to-one. Now this is a group dance card or a group meeting, which is a different definition. Now, that said, if you need to record that, you insist on recording that, that's completely up to you and your region and your own local policies. What I would say is if it is a, let's say it's a meeting with 4 people, then as long as both of them just put in one for a mixture of those 2 people. What you don't want to see is that I have a, let's say, a contact sphere meeting with 7 people. That doesn't count as 7 one-to-ones. That's just one meeting that I had that week. So the other way to do that is also just to use a regular paper slip for that activity. Does that make sense, Julie? Does that answer your question? Cool. All right, so if there's no other questions on this, I really want to take you guys more beyond this home screen and into some of the other functions in BNI Connect. All right, so now to get to some of the other things that we're going to be doing, such as entering the POMS reports and the speakers and all that kind of stuff, we are going to have to go to the scary place beyond the home screen. And to do that, we're going to have to use these menus up here along the top. And by the way, some of these things you may not see on your screen yet. If you're taking over a position, a leadership team position on October 1st, when you step into that position, should be as of midnight, October 1st, you'll be assigned that position in the system. At that point, the next time you log in, you will have additional permissions. You'll have access to additional menu items. So if you don't see what I'm seeing now, don't panic. Just wait until the 1st and those get automatically assigned. And if they don't, just calmly and politely give a call to your executive director or your regional office and just say, hey, it doesn't look like I have the permissions yet. Do you mind if assigning me into that position? All right. So that said, we have network operations and reports. Really, that's the places that you're going to spend the majority of your time. Now, network is going to be all of the different networking components. So we have groups and connections, testimonials, things like that. You can also access those network functions by going here and clicking on My Network. And here you'll find these other networking functions as well. We have the connections, we have groups, the discussion groups. You have a regional document library. So if you're, let's say, the vice president, you're looking for the control letters, the accountability letters for absences. More than likely, you will find them here. These are documents that your regional office is sharing. Testimonials, upcoming events such as member success programs, things like that. And finally, an internal messaging system. The next 2 options, operations and reports, that's really where we're going to be spending the majority of our time. Operations is the day-to-day management of your chapter, and that's where all of the data entry goes. So if you're thinking you need to enter something into BNI Connect, or you need to input something, you're always going to go to operations. Reports, on the other hand, are always read-only. Reports are read-only. So you can't ever, enter the POMS report under reports. Even though it's a report, you're not entering it under reports, you're entering it under operations. Data entry operations, reports are read-only. So let's take a look at this operations menu and see what kind of stuff is in there. So I'm going to go to operations and then chapter. And here we'll see all the different day-to-day kind of chapter management stuff that we have available to us. So the top option there is, just going to wait for your screen to catch up to mine. There we go. So the top option there should say Manage Visitors. And Manage Visitors is where we're going to go to work with visitors that have come to our chapter, or recording visitors and managing visitors after they've attended, as well as pre-registering visitors, so visitors that might come to the meeting. We definitely want to track those as well so that they get reminders for coming to the meeting. I'll show you that in just a few seconds. The next option down, we have meeting management. So these are the two big aspects about our meeting. The first of which is view POMs. We can go back and view any individual POMs report since the beginning of time for your chapter. So of course, assuming they were entering them into BNI Connect at the time. But so I could go back and see an individual POMs report from 10 years ago and what was entered on that particular date. The second option here is enter POMs, and that's what mostly our vice presidents are going to be doing on a weekly basis right after the meeting. You rush back to your office and immediately log into BNI Connect and start entering your weekly POMs report. And I'll show you how that works. And then the final thing, usually it's the secretary treasurers, and that is entering the speaker rotation. So entering the speaker rotation has a couple of great benefits as well, such as sending out a notification reminder about who is speaking that week. The next option down is called Manage Memberships, and this is where we're going to go if we're going to be entering any new members into the system, or we're going to be renewing members, or working with the renewal process. I'm not going to go into this today. There are, right now, not all regions are entering applications themselves at the chapter level. A lot of regions still mail that into the office. That said, if you are in a region that does enter your own applications and would like me to show you that, I'll show you that at the end of the presentation today. Just drop me a question in there and I'd be happy to go through that process. All right, the next thing down is Manage Goals. Now, BNI Connect does have a goal setting program in it, and it's great because you can go in, you can set your goals for the year, and BNI Connect will actually keep you up to date with the progress of your goals as you progress. So as the year goes on. So you can put in your goals of, let's say I'm looking to get, our chapter wants to pass 53 referrals on a monthly basis. Based on the POMs report, we'll tell you whether you're hitting that goal or not. I'm not going to get into that today either because that is a whole webinar by itself. But if you'd like to learn more about the goal setting session, we're going to be doing a webinar tomorrow, Thursday, September 29th, same bat time, same bat channel, here at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. So that's going to be tomorrow. The next thing down is the mentoring program, where you can assign a mentor and a mentee pair, and BNI Connect will send them a weekly email kind of coaching them through the process of the mentoring program, what they should be talking about each week, and what they should be prepared for in upcoming weeks. Create email. There's a couple of cool tools in here that I'm going to show you, and that bottom option, Manage News. Manage News is kind of a special function. I'm not going to get into that today. What it does is there's a special page on your chapter websites that is open to group authoring, and this is meant to be almost like a whiteboard type situation with your chapter to be able to keep each other apprised of upcoming events and things like that without necessarily giving people access to your entire chapter website. All right, so while I'm here, let me just, let's look at this bottom option first, and we have this create email option. There's a couple of really useful tools in here that most leadership teams use on a regular basis. The first option here says email my chapter. Right here it says email my chapter, and you'll probably use this one quite a bit. What this does is it gives you the most current distribution list for email addresses for your chapter. So I remember before BNI Connect, the way I would go in and send an email out to my chapter is I'd go back to my Outlook and kind of look for the last group email and then send it out to the entire group, hit reply all, but it never went to the right people. There was always some people that had left the chapter and the new people that weren't in the list yet. this is the most convenient and kind of foolproof way to get that information. You just highlight it all, Control-C for copy, or you can always right-click and choose copy. You do have to use your own email program, so I would start up Outlook, for example. I really recommend putting everybody in the BCC line. That is a very polite thing to do. It also cuts down on the reply all messages. And type out your email and send it. That's all there is to that. So it's a great way to make sure that you're getting that email out successfully to the whole chapter. Now, some people try to use this email tool up here, this messaging tool. While you're welcome to use that, there's a couple of things that you need to know. Firstly, that is an internal messaging system. So unless, by default, unless somebody logs into BNI Connect and goes and checks their messages, they're never going to see it. And a lot of people don't log into BNI Connect and check their messages right away. So there's a warning there, especially if it's something urgent. It may not get into everybody's inboxes quickly enough. The second thing is it'll start with everybody from your chapter, but it's really meant as a communications tool with all of your connections. So as you start to connect with other people in BNI around the world, whether that's from your region or even from other countries, you'll see that list no longer is just your chapter members. It's everybody that you know in BNI. So I recommend using this Email My Chapter. Now the second thing here, email visitor invitation. That's a great little tool, very helpful for members as well. It's just a quick way to invite somebody to a chapter meeting. And this is, again, really helpful for new members that may not know exactly how to explain BNI quite yet. It has just the right amount of verbiage in it. It was designed by the marketing department, so it works really, really well. So you just go to Create Email Visitor Invitation, and fill out a couple of fields here. Now, by the way, this should never be a cold call invitation. This is meant to be a follow-up invitation. In other words, you meet somebody at a networking event, you're out there, you're like, hey, this person would be great to come and visit my BNI chapter, and you go to, hey, I'd love to invite you to my BNI meeting, introduce you to a bunch of people that I network with on a regular basis. Do you mind if I send you an invitation? Do you mind if I send you an invitation? And now you go back and you send this invitation. So let's say that I'm sending this invitation to John Smith from Smith Co. and the email address. I'm going to put my own email address in here so I get the copy of the message and you guys can see what it looks like. Now, it will also be CC'd to you, and when you get that copy, you'll know, of course, that email did go out and your potential visitor would have received it at that point. But let's personal message. So this personal message is going to be the top line that is in the email that they get. So I'm going to say, it was great meeting you at the networking event. Here is the invitation I promised. Please be sure to hit the RSVP button. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click send. And as I said, as soon as I click send, this is kind of goes out immediately. And in just a second, here it is. I've got my invitation, and what you'll see here is a nice professionally done invitation, has all the information about BNI, has some great information about your chapter, where you meet, and the most important thing here is the RSVP now. And what this is a direct link to RSVP to your chapter meeting. Now this right here is what really is a game changer for BNI and inviting visitors, because this now takes it from a casual invitation to now they're expected to show up and they're kind of obligated to show up to the meeting. So you'll have less people that just don't show up at the last minute. So if I hit the RSVP now button, This is going to take me out to my chapter registration page. Let's say I'm John Smith. I'm going to choose the date that I'd like to visit. Say I'm going to visit next week. From Smith Co. And the nice thing is, too, that all these people already know all this information about themselves. So it makes it a lot easier for them to fill it out than for you to usually use the visitor sign-in sheet and all the chicken scratch trying to figure out what people wrote. They can obviously choose their industry and classification, or they can just type it in themselves if they choose I don't know, who invited them, and a CAPTCHA. Just make sure that they aren't robots filling out this form. Now, once I click submit, some really cool things happen. First of all, John Smith will get an email saying, congratulations, you are now registered to visit this meeting. And here's the email that they received. Thank you for your interest. You are officially confirmed to visit BNI on this date at this time. Right there, that's what turns people around. You'll get more people that actually show up to the meeting. And on top of that, the leadership team is notified that they have a visitor coming next week and all of the details about that visitor. So the president, vice president, secretary treasurer, all of the visitor hosts, and the director consultant for the chapter will all get a notification letting them know that there is a visitor that's coming next week. This is a great opportunity for you to follow up with that visitor as well and to let them know that you're looking forward to meeting them at the meeting. You may even want to go so far as to make sure that you have a name badge ready for them. The more you can actually kind of reach out and touch this visitor before they even show up to the meeting, the greater the chances that they will end up wanting to be a part of that group going forward. All right, so that's the email portion of it. Let's take a look at some of these other functions while we're on the subject of visitors. So after a visitor has registered, or if you don't send an invitation, let's say that you have a potential visitor coming, you can always, they didn't want to register themselves, you can register a prospective visitor as well. You just need to fill out the forms, and it's, again, just pretty much the same as it is on the website, but it still starts that same process. They'll get a confirmation email, and they'll get a reminder 2 days before the meeting that they should be showing up. Now, after the meeting has taken place, usually the visitor host or the secretary treasurer, it's their job to go back and record all of the visitors that have come to the meeting. Now, my recommended process for this is to make sure you go into Manage Visitors, and you always want to check for the registered visitors, which hopefully you remember from the email notification, but I always like to go to Manage Registered Visitors first, and then I can search. I can either put in some criteria or just hit Go, but I can search for any of the visitors that may have come, and you can see John Smith has registered a lot for this chapter. But if his record is here, now I can just go and click the Edit button, for example. And rather than having to type everything out, all I have to do is click on Visitor Attended. I can then choose whether or not to add that person to the PALMS report. I can check all their other information. I do have to verify who invited them. Fill in any details if I need to. And then at the bottom I can choose whether or not to send them a follow-up email. A couple of important things. Now, there may be times when you don't want to add them to the PALMS. Now, what that means is that the person that invited them gets a 1 in the V column, in the visitor column in the PALMS report, which is great, especially if you're using things like the Power of One report, where this person's traffic lights score just went up a little bit. However, there is another metric related to this, and that's in the chapter traffic lights, that it's called visitor conversion ratio. And what the visitor conversion ratio is simply the number of visitors that have been given credit in the PALMS report divided by the number of new members during that time period. So if you end up recording the same visitor, let's say a visitor comes 1 week, they come back a second week, they come back a third week, they come back a fourth week. Now I know we're only supposed to have 2 visits, but it's okay to record the visitor each time. But what you want to do is the second, third, and fourth time, make sure that you uncheck the box to add them to the POMS report, because otherwise it will significantly lower that conversion rate. And you also can choose whether or not to send them an email. Sometimes they may already be a member and it just doesn't make sense to send them a thank you email. Let's say it is their second or third visit. You might not want to send them an email, or let's say that you're really far behind doing the data entry. That might be another reason. Now once you click submit, that particular John Smith will be taken out of the list and be presented to the POMS report, and now becomes part of our visitor database for the chapter. And it's great practice to keep that visitor database up to date for your chapter, because it does provide, it's kind of also a marketing database for you. And you know, as you have social events, let's say you're having a business after hours event that your chapter is hosting, or you're having a visitors day or a stack day, it's great to go back to all those visitors that may have been there once before and say, hey, you know what, we're having a special visitors day this week. Love to invite you back for another meeting. And if a visitor didn't pre-register, you can always click on Add Visitor to add a visitor that had just attended the meeting but didn't pre-sign up. Going back to the Operations menu. By the way, here is the thank you for visiting BNI email that John just got. And of course, if you're just adding a visitor, you could also just do record a visitor post-meeting. All right, so that's the visitor process. The next thing we're going to look at is the POMS reports. And one of the major responsibilities usually of the vice president, but really for any chapter, is to make sure that we're tracking the activity that happens on a weekly basis. Now, under meeting management, you can either view POMS, which will allow us to go in and really go in and look at any POMS report in the history of the chapter. So here in Antarctica, my Burr chapter, I can even go back a couple of years and really look at every report that's ever been submitted for this chapter. So you'll see that there's a bunch of different statuses here for these reports. We have completed, which means that that report has been submitted. It was done. It is now part of all the official statistics. There's also one called holiday. Holiday means that we didn't meet that week. Draft means that it has not been submitted yet. And then there's also discarded for one that got thrown away. If I click on this word, for example, completed, that will take me into that particular POMS report for that week. And I can see all of the individual entries that were made for the members and the totals and any remarks that were made about that particular meeting. All right, going back to the operations menu, if I just want to enter a POMS report, I can click on Meeting Management, Enter POMS. Now, when I go to enter the POMS report, the very first thing that you'll see is the visitor verification screen. And before you can enter the POMS report, you have to make a decision on the visitors, because what's happening is the visitor hosts are putting in the visitors. They may or may not know about that, add visitor to POMS. You have the final say as to whether the person gets credit. So in this case, what we can see here is it's saying that John Smith was the visitor. We're being told that Jeremy Walsh is to get credit for inviting that visitor, and it was Jeremy that entered that visitor into the system. If I say yes, it will go back to the BNI meeting on the 23rd and give me credit for inviting that visitor. If I say no, it doesn't delete the visitor, it just doesn't add the credit to the POMS. If I want to double check that POMS report to see if we had already manually done it, I could click the word completed and it would bring me there. I'm just going to go ahead and say yes on that one. And Sharon, I do see your question. I will come to that in just a second. All right, so next thing is we're ready to enter our POMS report. We just need to choose the date that we're going to enter our meeting for. And let's say I'm going to enter our meeting from this morning. Oh, we already had one. From my last demonstration, I had already done that. Let's go ahead a week and let's pretend that we have a time machine and we have moved forward by 1 week. And click on Enter POMS. And here's where we basically just fill out the spreadsheet. So in case you don't know what all this stuff means along the top, PALMS, P-A-L-M-S, that is, stands for the attendance, present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. Present, absent, late, medical, and substitute. So then we have two RG, RGI, RGO, then RRI, RRO. So those are the two different sides of the referral. RG is referrals given. RR is referrals received. I and O, so RGI is a referral given inside. An inside referral means that two members did business with each other. In other words, one member used another member's services. For example, Johnny Depp needed some comedy lessons, so he went to Alfred E. Newman and hired him for his services. So that would be a referral given inside for Johnny Depp, and Alfred E. Newman is the recipient of that inside referral. An outside referral is when I introduce anybody else that I know to somebody in my group. It could be my mother. My mother is looking to get her mortgage refinanced, and I introduce her to the mortgage broker in the chapter. So that would be an outside referral. So let's say that Ricky Martin referred his wife to Adam Sandler. That would be a referral given outside for Ricky Martin and a referral received outside for Adam Sandler. Now, visitors will automatically appear if you're doing the visitor process. Otherwise, you can manually add them. One-to-ones are when two members meet with each other. Let's say that Darcy Doolittle met with Albert Camus this week, so they both get a credit for a one-to-one. And finally, we have thank you for closed business. And again, this is measuring business generated by that member. So if Art Garfunkel had generated a referral that helped somebody earn $5,000 in their business, he would get that credit for generating $5,000. You do have to scroll over to get to the CEU column, and you can mark the CEUs. Now, as I said, if you're using online slips, all that will be entered automatically into the system, and you can use the slips audit report to see all those details. Finally, we can add any remarks about that meeting. We can submit it, which finalizes it. Mark as holiday is really important if your chapter doesn't meet on a particular week. For example, my personal chapter, we meet on Thursdays. At the end of November, we have a holiday here in the United States. It is Thanksgiving. So we typically don't meet on Thanksgiving. We found we had very poor attendance on Thursday mornings on Thanksgiving, so we stopped meeting on Thanksgiving. We still need to make sure that we go in and mark that as a holiday, because any slips that were passed for that meeting, so online slips, will then get pushed to next week's meeting. So that first meeting in whatever the next weekly meeting is. It will also take that out of any statistics that do per week calculations. Save as draft. Keep in mind that BNI Connect does have a 30-minute timeout in the system. So if you walk away from your computer, let's say that you're entering your POMS report and the phone rings and you pick up the phone and you walk away from your computer for a half hour, when you come back, you will be logged out and you will have lost everything. So if you are going to walk away, make sure that you click that Save as Draft, and then you can go back and complete it later. Now, if you completely mess everything up beyond all recognition, You can always discard it. That will throw that report away. Any online slips will still be salvaged, so those will come right back in the recreated report, but it allows you to start over. All right, I see a couple of questions here. One is from Lisa. Lisa says, is this a specific VP login, or will our personal login be updated if we are the incoming VP? So all of these special permissions that I'm showing you will just be part of your regular login. So as soon as you officially have taken over that position on the 1st, these rights will be automatically assigned to you by the system, and you'll then see the option for entering a POMS report. All right, does that make sense, Lisa? Does that help? Awesome. So you don't have to remember another login. Sharon says, entering a visitor, the email is required. And what do you enter if they don't give an email? So there's two answers to that. If I go to the visitor entry, now for pre-registering a visitor, so registering a prospective visitor, here the email is 100% required. There's no getting around it, because the whole purpose of this pre-registration, or a good portion of the purpose, is that it's going to do that whole email campaign. So without an email address, we can't do all those emails and the follow-ups and everything like that. So that's why it's required here. If I'm just recording a visitor after the meeting, if I uncheck the visitor follow-up email, it is now no longer required. Of course, I mean, you could always, I don't recommend this, but if you just need to get it in there, you want to get that visitor pre-registered and you don't have an email, so the notification still goes out, you could always just fake it, no email at noemail.com or something like that, and that would work as well if, in a pinch. Does that help, Sharon? All right. Paula says, does the president have access to all this as well? Is it always the VP that enters POMS, or can the president do it? Very good point. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, so thank you. Generally speaking, okay, generally speaking, by default, all of the leadership team positions have access to all of the other leadership team functions, which means that the president, the vice president, and the secretary-treasurer all have permissions to be able to enter a POMS report, or they all have permissions to be able to enter the speaker rotation, or to enter visitors, or to, all of those things, even though one position may be the one that does it all the time. Now, that said, the reason for that is so that you guys can back each other up as well. So if the vice president goes on vacation for a couple of weeks, there's no need for the POMS report to stop being entered. The president or the secretary-treasurer can, jump in and help him out. That said, again, that is a customizable permission region to region. So if you're not sure about that, or it doesn't seem to be the case, just have a quick chat with your executive director or director consultant, and they can answer that for you more definitively. Does that help, Paula? It's Paula? I apologize if I say your names wrong. All right. So that's that. Again, I'm going to skip over managing members. Oh, I forgot one thing. Duh. Under meeting management, we have view edit speakers. So this is the speaker rotation in BNI Connect. You definitely want to be entering your speakers for your chapter. I can go to view edit speakers, and I can, if you've been entering your speakers, you can go back and review when the last time people have spoken. So it will keep a history of your speakers. You cannot go back and fill in the gaps, though. But if you've been doing it, I can see all the times that people have spoken. I can see that I've also already put people in for the rest of October here. But let's say I wanted to assign a speaker. I just click Assign Speaker, enter the date they're going to be speaking. And it looks like I actually missed October 19th. and I just choose a speaker. One thing you will notice is that you will see your directors and executive directors in this list as well, so that they can be chosen. But let's say that, I don't know, Alfred E. Newman will be speaking that week, and he's going to be talking about the new issue of Mad Magazine online, right? I can hit submit. Now, the nice thing about that is that Alfred will be getting a reminder both 6 days and 3 days before the meeting that he is speaking at. The Secretary Treasurer also gets a reminder. And on the chapter website, so if I go to antarcticreferrals.com and I go to the Burr chapter, at the bottom of their page lists all their upcoming speakers for the next month. So it's a little bit of added visibility for the member as well. All right, the last thing I just want to show you on this screen is going to be the mentoring program, and assigning a mentor-mentee is pretty much the same as assigning a speaker. We're just going to go to Assign Mentor-Mentee, choose the date that we want the emails to start. So it doesn't have to be today. Let's say I prefer if they got the emails on Mondays. I can start that campaign instead next Monday. And let's say that Bob Jones is going to be mentoring Mike Jones. I hit submit, and then as of Monday, they'll start getting that weekly email reminding them of being engaged in the mentoring process. All right, so that's the operations menu. Does anybody have any questions? We have about 13 minutes left until the top of the hour, and I want to hit about a half a dozen reports to show you guys as well. All right, so if there's no questions, now let's go to the reports menu. So when we get to reports here, a quick thing, I'm not going to be able to go through every single report today unless anybody wants to hang out with me for another hour, in which case I'd be happy to. But under the reports menu, again, these are all, oh, quick question from Ron. Ron says, where can we get an idea of the mentoring emails? Those vary region by region. A lot of regions have customized their own mentoring campaign. What I would recommend doing, why don't you just assign yourself as a mentor or mentee with somebody else on your leadership team, right? So you can assign yourself, have you be the mentor and the vice president be the mentee, and then you'll see those emails come through for the next week, or for the next 6 or 8 weeks, depending on how long your particular campaign is set up for. Either that, or give your director consultant or your executive director a call and they can send you a copy of the emails they're using in your area. Does that make sense, Ron? Does that help? Cool. All right, so going back to reports. The reports, again, are read-only. Basically, you can't break anything when it comes to reports. I highly recommend just going through and clicking on a bunch of these reports and just playing with them. There's some great data that you can find in here. And again, in the next 11 minutes, there's no way I'm going to be able to get through all of them. I just want to show you about 5 or 6 of my top reports that I think are really important for leadership teams. Okay, cool. So most of them, of course, are right here at the top of the list. So firstly, we have the member training report. This one's obvious. You can find out when people went to training. But more importantly, there is an option here that everybody seems to miss called Show Never Attended. And actually, I'm going to switch to my own region and my own chapter so we have better data than looking at Antarctica. But what's great about this is that, as a secretary-treasurer, for example, you're going to be assigning people to the speaker rotation, and they're not supposed to be assigned to the speaker rotation until they've done their member success program. Right? So you need to check to make sure that they've done it. Also, people on the membership committee, when you're reviewing people on a weekly and a monthly basis, you want to make sure that they've taken some trainings and taken especially the member success program. So I can go here and look at the member success program, And I can see that we have, this is my personal chapter, we have 5 members that have not taken a member success program yet. Now, a couple of them are 3 months, but there's these people have been in the chapter for 6 months, almost 7 months. You know, we need to really sit down and talk with them and make sure that they get themselves scheduled. That is the number one thing that new members can do to make sure that they're successful in BNI. Right, so that's the show never attended. The chapter roster, this is going to be fairly obvious. It has your chapter roster, all the people in your chapter. But what's important here, aside from the bottom, it's going to have a list of all the members and what category they're in and things like that, their phone number. Up here at the top is your chapter assignments. So you definitely want to make sure, you know, if you're, let's say that you're the president, your visitor host comes up to you and says, oh yeah, I haven't been able to enter any of the visitors in the system because I don't have permission to do it. Come and check this report out first. If they're not listed as the visitor host, then they probably don't have the permission to do it, right? Or same thing, if you're the vice president next week, first thing to check, are you actually listed as the vice president? Because until you're listed as the vice president, you can't enter POMS reports. This also has, you know, the contact information for your director consultants. Now down at the bottom, the other thing I really like is the quick view of the POMS report for the last 90 days. I kind of look at this as it's kind of a red flag report. If I see people in here, for example, that haven't had any one-to-ones in the past 90 days, these are people I kind of want to go to on the side and say, hey, is everything okay? You know, maybe schedule a one-to-one with them so that, you know, they get more engaged in the chapter. You know, like for me, you know, I'm looking at a couple of people here that I know are longtime members, but have only had 2 one-to-ones in 3 months. You know, is it any wonder that they've only had 1 referral in the last 3 months as well? So those are people I'd want to see if I can get together with and coach and help them to be more successful. All right, we do have a question real quick. Amy says, if we have members that are showing as never attended, but you know that they've attended, how do we get that fixed? So the way to get that fixed is to send an email to your director consultant or to your regional office. That's something that it means that either that member success program wasn't recorded in BNI Connect, or maybe they just didn't take the attendance at that one. So usually it's just an oversight, a clerical error, but they can definitely fix that for you. All right, so Diane, I'm going to, all right, so Diane has a question. She says, is it possible for a member to see which of their own referrals have turned into a thank you for closed business for the member to whom they provided that referral? That way, if a referral hasn't closed, we may be able to follow up and help. In our chapter, we've tried to follow up by having each member bring their own thank you for closed business report to a meeting, but that's a pretty messy way to do it. So there's 2 answers to that question. The first answer is that no, we can't because it's illegal. Or rather, it's illegal for a lot of professions. For example, think of a lawyer or a doctor or a counselor or a financial advisor. You know, they can't tell us that that client, yep, oh yeah, they you know, contracted us for that legal service or for that medical advice or for, you know, that financial stuff. Most of those categories would never be able to submit thank you for closed business again. So from that standpoint, we can't take the chance of doing that with all those different professions. So that's one answer to it. The other answer is that there is kind of a way to do it, but people have to be using the referral tracking sheet in order to say that their business has closed. Once they see that the business is closed, your referral partner also sees that the business was closed. And if you haven't seen that before, just drop another note in here to show you the referral tracking. And as soon as I get through these reports, kind of in our bonus time, I'll show that to you. Is that fair enough, Diane? Cool. So give me a couple of minutes to get through a couple more reports and I'll show that to you. All right, so next report here, the membership dues report. This is going to be the report that mostly the vice presidents and secretary treasurers are going to use on a regular basis. This is where we come to find out what people are due for renewal. Obviously, you guys in the top 3 positions will be at the top because your terms are currently compensated, meaning whenever you step into that position, your membership gets paused. So, for example, Tom Rowland, when he came into being the president of our chapter, he had 9 months left on his membership. He's been in the position for a year. When he steps out October 1st, his renewal date will be reset to 9 months from October 1st, which will end up being September 1st of next year. Now, scrolling down a little bit more, we have our people that are in bold. The people in bold should be in the renewal process already. Obviously, October 1st is right around the corner, so Ken should have his renewal already input and ready to go. And the people for November 1st, our membership committee should be meeting with them. We should be getting their applications and going through that final review process. Now, beyond that, my recommendation is to also look at people that are about 6 months out, basically the people that are due in April and May, because these are the people that they'll be starting to make the decision now whether they want to renew based on how well BNI is going for them. Now, for the people that it's going really well for, that's great. It's going to be a no-brainer that they renew in 6 months. However, there may be some people that are struggling, and you want to get to those people now. 6 months from now, then over the course of the next 6 months, there's time for them to improve. There's time for them to, get better at giving referrals or figure out why they're not receiving referrals or be able to do more one-to-ones or get additional training. Now is the time to start working with them so that you can help them to be more successful. At the very, very end, right before they're renewing on October 1st, now it's more just, it's a yay or a nay or begging them to stay, which isn't the situation we want to be in. We want to be helping make people successful, and you need a longer term vision for that. All right, scrolling down a little bit, we also have any new members that have joined, late members, and people that have left the chapter. I'm going to skip down a couple. The Summary POMS report. This is the bread and butter of our chapter as far as statistics go. It's going to show us by default 6 months, but you can choose any time frame you want. This is not limited to 6 months. I can go back to, for example, January 1st. Let's say I want a year to date. So I can choose through January 1st to today's date. I also choose whether or not I want to show dropped members. By default, it's not going to show any dropped members. So it's just going to show on the list here all of the people that are currently active in our chapter and what their statistics are. But there's value to, and by the way, the totals at the bottom are inclusive of dropped members, even though they're not showing here. So, if you are a, very detail-oriented and you add up all of these columns, they will not match what's on the bottom. And the reason for that is that, again, basically the dropped members, the people who are no longer members, are simply hidden from display. But once in a while, I actually like to go back a couple of years even. Let's say go back to 2013 and show dropped members. And what I like to do with this is look at this list and say, okay, who was a good member that's no longer here? I know for a fact that we have a couple of members, like John Barth, for example, in my chapter, that he left because he was getting too busy. He had received a boatload of referrals, and he was growing his business to the point where he needed to hire some people, and he needed to step away from BNI so his business didn't fall apart. Well, that was about a year ago. It's probably a good idea to check in with him and say, John, hey, is it a good time for you to come back to BNI now? You were a really good member, and we miss you, and your category hasn't been taken yet. So a good use of the some of the older data in the system. All right, the last thing I want to show you guys is really with vice presidents, you're going to have to be working with the control letters or rather the accountability letters, and there is a new procedure for absences. We now have a rolling 6-month absence policy, so it's no longer April to October and then October to April, you have 3 absences. By the way, the reason this changed, this was not a Ivan Meisner decision, or this was not a BNI corporate decision. This was done by the International Board of Advisors. If you're not sure what that is, every region in the world has the opportunity to send a BNI representative that can only be a member. They can't be a director or an executive director or anything. They can only be a member to sit on this board of advisors. And anytime BNI has a problem that they need to solve, they put it to the board of advisors. So the problem is that BNI in general was having terrible attendance right before April 1st, the last couple of weeks in March, and right before October 1st, last couple of weeks in September. Chapters were missing 20 to 30% of their members because they were treating these absences as a use it or lose it vacation policy. So all of a sudden, these great members who had never been absent, all of a sudden they come up, they're like, oh, well, October 1st is coming and I still have 3 absences. I'm not going to show up for a couple of weeks. And it was hurting their credibility. It was hurting their referrals that they were receiving, and we were really concerned about it. So they went to the International Board of Advisors. How can we fix this? And they said, well, why are we looking at this as a 6-month time frame? Why don't we do so many other things like member traffic lights or the Power of One report or chapter traffic lights? Those are all done on rolling 6 months. Why aren't we doing absences the same way? Oh yeah, how about that? So we've changed a couple of the reports here. The absence report now does a rolling 6 months by default. So you need to keep track of the meeting. Who was absent today? Then you come back to this report. And for the people that were absent, you look and say, okay, well, Scott was absent today. Scott, this is now his 2nd absence. So I need to be sending him the 2nd absence accountability letter. Right? So it's as simple as that. Yes, some people may get the same letter twice in a row or 3 times in a row, because you can also look at what's called this POMS attendance report, which is also rolling 6 months. And now you can see the time frame for when those absences happened. Right? So this report's a little bit more complicated because it's pulling a whole bunch of data, but it's putting this into really almost a calendar view of when those absences occurred. So actually I can see here that we have Dennis here. Dennis had a couple of absences, but as of next week, he'll go from having 3 absences to having 2 absences, and then in just 1 more week, he'll actually go to only having 1 absence, and he hasn't had an absence in a long time. So this is a great report for seeing those types of trends in a membership. All right, so we are at the top of the hour, and as I said, this one is always a little bit of a longer webinar, especially because we have some great questions that get asked. Now, I'm happy to continue to show you guys more things, but I do want to be very respectful of people's times that have taken time away from their business to be here with us today, learn a little bit more about BNI Connect. For those of you that do need to leave right away, thank you guys so much. Thank you for taking on this position in your chapter. I know you're going to do a great job, but if you have any questions throughout the year, by all means, ask, especially when it comes to BNI Connect. 100%, I want you to, rather than spend 2 hours searching for something, just shoot us an email, support@bniconnect.com. support@bniconnect.com. Support@bni.com is for policy questions that will go to headquarters. Technical questions, support@bniconnect.com. We will be happy to help you out. Sharon asks, will this recording be posted right away? I will do it as quickly as possible. I'll be completely honest, I'm a little bit behind on getting these recordings up, but again, they will be on the support site. So click this question mark in the upper right-hand corner. Go to live and recorded webinars, and I will get the August and September ones up as quickly as I can. It's just been a rough getting them up there. But worst case, click on July, and you can review the entire series. And there is a leadership team tools and reports that I did in July. For the most part, it is the same content. So I'm talking about the same things a lot of the times. However, it's different questions. So if you're looking for the specific questions from today, then I will try to get this one posted. If you guys would like me to, I'm happy to just email you the recording right away as soon as I get it up there, if you need to share it with your other members. All right, so hopefully that helps. All right, so again, questions, comments, concerns, and compliments. I'd love to hear them all, so please start posting your questions in. Again, I will stay here until every single question's answered. Again, this is what I do all day, every day, so I'm just as happy to answer your questions now while we are all live together in one place. All right, so Diane, let me show you what I'm talking about as far as, so the question was, just to remind everybody, the question was, how can we tell if referrals have turned into thank you for closed business? So the way to do that is whenever I submit a referral online in BNI Connect, that goes into 2 places, okay? Actually, it goes into 3 places. So the first place it goes to, right, is when I submit a referral, the first place it goes to is I can go into review my referral slips and basically see every referral that I have ever passed through BNI Connect. So let me actually pull a bigger time period here. So I can actually see every referral that I've passed online in BNI Connect. And what we'll see here is that there's all the information, but there's also one here that says tracking sheet status. So keep that in mind. Tracking sheet status. And this field is actually shared with my referral partner, because when I receive a referral in BNI Connect, so if I go to my received referrals report and I see the electronic referrals that I've received, I will also see the status that other people have put in. Okay, so this status here is shared between the referral giver and the referral receiver. Okay, so you following that so far, Diane? Right, so what that means is that for referrals that I receive, I should be marking those as closed, and that way my referral partner knows that I have turned in thank you for closed business. That's the only way we can really share that information if we want to with the other person. We do that by going to track your referrals received. All right, so we go into track your referrals received, choose the time period and click go. I'll see all the referrals I've received in the past month, right? I can then edit this one. And if I change this status, that will then share that with the person that gave me the referral. Other than that, we absolutely cannot legally right now put any notifications on the thank you for closed business entry or anything like that. Again, there's too much risk that we could again do something that's not 100% legal with some of those people. So the status isn't automatically updated when I enter a thank you for closed business. I need to go back to the referral received. That is correct. So you have to go in and track it. It is not tied to the actual thank you for closed business slip. I mean, there's no way to tie it because there's no way to actually tie this referral together in this slip. So you have to go back and mark the status. You can even record a different number for the thank you for closed business on the tracking sheet than the one that you submit with the system. And Shannon says, or Sharon, I'm sorry, says, This is only for referrals received online. And if it's entered by the VP, the process is not available. That is correct. I can only do this process for ones that my referral partners send to me online in BNI Connect. There is the ability to add a referral that I want to track personally, but it does not share that information with any referral partner because there is no referral partner attached to this. Does that make sense? Cool. What other questions do we have? Questions, comments, concerns, compliments? Sharon, what I'll do is I'll email back all of the registrants for this particular webinar once I have it uploaded, and give you guys a link to it. And I promise you I will try to get that done before the end of the day tomorrow. It's been crazy with all the people changing over, but I will get that done. All right, Denham says, I was a few minutes late to this webinar. What is the login for this control panel and who would assign me a user and password? Denham, it's just your regular BNI Connect login. So you just log in with your regular username and password. After Monday, if you don't have access to some of these tools, so again, when you log into BNI Connect, you'll be brought to this page, right? This is the home screen. And all these other functions are under operations and reports and things like that. You'll automatically have access to the new functions once you're officially in the position. If you don't have a BNI Connect login, you can do a couple of things. Let me just pull up another window here. So if you get to this page and you don't know your login and password, bniconnect.com, just click on Forgot Password, or if you've never logged in, click to New to BNI Connect, Register Now, and it will send you the invitation to register. And if you are still stuck, don't worry about it. Send us an email, support@bniconnect.com. Actually, we'd prefer if you go to the support site, support.bniconnect.com, there's an option up here that says submit a request, where you can submit a support ticket. That will go to our entire team who will be able to help you. All right, does that help, Denham? All right, that's the last question I have. So Denham says, awesome, thank you. I look forward to attending future webinars. And by the way, a great referral for me is to please share these webinars, and especially these live webinars. I would love to have more and more people on the webinars on a weekly and monthly basis. I put on these webinars specifically to help you, especially as you get new members in your chapter. Send them over to my BNI Connect webinars. We do a whole series just for new members. Now you can find them in two places on your regional calendar, but also if I go back to that support site, the question mark, and go to live and recorded webinars. I just posted, I haven't put them in the calendars yet, but I've just posted the October series. All right, so we do 9 webinars every month. The first 5 are for members. How do I submit slips? How do I, fill out my profile? How do I connect with other members? All of that. So all of that information is here. They're already booked out for October. Just click on the link to register or share this with your members, please. The other thing is I'll do this leadership team series again next month. So if you have somebody that couldn't make the live one, I specifically scheduled these ones for the first week so that if you missed it and you're new in your position, so let's say that you're the vice president and your secretary treasurer missed it today, they'd like to take advantage of the live one, I'll be doing that right in the beginning. Right on Monday, I'm going to do this particular webinar all over again. So good referral for me. Share these webinars. All right. Awesome. Rick said it was helpful. Thank you. Mark says thank you. Paul says thank you. Thank you guys so much again for being here. I know you guys are going to do great, but if you have any questions, by all means, we're here and we're happy to help you out. In the meantime, thank you guys so much and happy connecting.